He was struggling to keep his small business afloat. Things were tough for him. Then, suddenly he found an injured pilot in the storm and invited her home. He had no idea she would make his daughter's dreams soar. What he did not know was that the pilot was also watching him and his daughter. She had a surprise of her own planned for the two of them. David ran his hand through his short brown hair as he looked out over the stormy weather. The strong winds almost knocked him off his feet. It was one of those days when staying indoors was the only option. The rain poured relentlessly, making it impossible for him to work on his boats. David owned a small boat repair shop. He had inherited the business from his father, but lately things weren't going well. He was struggling to keep it afloat. Paying the bills and providing for his 6-year-old daughter Emma had become a real challenge. He sighed as he walked back into his garage. His eyes fell on the small figure of his daughter sitting on a stool. She was drawing a picture. "Daddy, look," she said with a smile, holding up her drawing. David forced a smile. It was a picture of a beautiful blue sky with white clouds and a rainbow. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," he said, kissing her forehead. But Emma wasn't looking at the drawing. She was gazing out into the storm. Her lower lip trembled slightly. He knew what she was thinking. Emma loved airplanes. Every day she would stand by the window and watch the planes fly overhead. She dreamed of becoming a pilot herself one day. But the truth was, David couldn't afford to buy her a plane. It was too expensive. He could barely make ends meet as it was. He wished he could give her the world, but all he could offer her was his love and a roof over their heads. As if sensing his thoughts, Emma asked in a small voice, "Will I ever get to see a real airplane, Daddy?" David's heart clenched. He knelt down in front of her. "Of course you will, sweetheart," he lied, hating himself for it. Emma sighed and went back to her drawing. David stood up and went back to the window. That's when he saw it. A small plane struggling against the wind. It was being tossed around like a toy. Suddenly, the wind seemed to catch the plane, and it started to fall. David's heart skipped a beat. He watched in horror as the plane lost altitude. It was heading straight for the ground. Without thinking twice, David ran outside into the storm. He didn't know if he was doing the right thing or not, but he couldn't just stand by and watch that pilot crash to her death. As David raced through the rain, he thought about Emma. Would his daughter be scared if he got hurt? If he died, who would take care of her then? He pushed the thoughts away. Couldn't afford to get distracted. He had to focus on saving that pilot. When he reached the site of the crash, he found a young woman lying next to the wreckage. She was unconscious. Blood was trickling down her forehead. David rushed to her side. He gently turned her head. Her face was pale. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice barely audible above the wind and the rain. The woman didn't respond. She was still breathing, but he could feel a pulse. With adrenaline pumping through his veins, David pulled the woman off the muddy ground. He tried to move her, but she was heavy. He needed help. David looked around frantically. There was no one in sight. The storm had driven everyone indoors. He was alone. That's when he got an idea. He had to get the woman back to his house. He lived close to where the plane had crashed. Maybe he could get his daughter to help him carry the woman. With renewed determination, David hoisted the woman onto his shoulders. It was a struggle, but he managed to get her upright. Then he started walking towards his house. The walk seemed to take forever. The rain was soaking him, making his clothes heavy. He could feel the weight of the woman pulling him down. Just when he thought he couldn't take another step, he saw his house in the distance. Relief flooded him. He quickened his pace. When he finally reached his doorstep, he realized he had a new problem. He couldn't knock on the door with his hands full. He needed to put the woman down. But where could he do that without anyone seeing her? He scanned his surroundings. His gaze fell on the pile of tarpaulin and wooden planks behind his car. It was covered with another tarpaulin, so no one would see inside. It was perfect. He carefully laid the woman down and then hurried to the door. He had to get some help. He fumbled with his keys. When he finally opened the door, he quickly explained the situation to Emma. "Don't be afraid, sweetheart," he said, trying to sound calm and reassuring. "This lady just needs our help," explained what had happened. To his surprise, Emma didn't hesitate. "I'll get her a blanket," she said, already running up the stairs. When Emma returned with the blanket, David helped her lay it over the woman. "Can we call an ambulance?" Emma asked. "Of course, sweetheart," he said, kneeling beside her. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number. "Yes, I need an ambulance," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. While they waited for the ambulance, Emma and David sat beside the woman. They talked to her, asking her questions, trying to keep her awake. Finally, the sound of sirens broke through the roar of the rain. Relief washed over David as the paramedics lifted the woman onto a stretcher. "Will she be okay?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know, sweetheart," David replied, his throat tight. One of the paramedics looked at them. "She's going to be fine," he said with a smile. "You two did a great job helping her." He turned to leave, then turned back. "And tell your daughter," he said, looking at Emma, "she's got a bright future ahead of her, maybe even in the medical field." He winked at her before leaving. Emma blushed and looked down. David ruffled her hair. "That's my girl," he said, a proud smile on his face. Later that week, David was working in his garage when he heard the sound of a helicopter. He walked out to see what was going on and saw a group of people standing by his mailbox. A woman was among them. It was the pilot he had saved. "Hello, David," she said, smiling. "I wanted to thank you and Emma for saving my life." She took a step forward. "I owe you both so much." She looked down at her feet. "I'm so embarrassed. I've never crashed a plane before in my life. I've been flying for years, but I've never seen such a storm." She looked up at David, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found me." David waved his hand dismissively. "It was no trouble at all. You saved my daughter's life once, so I had to return the favor," he said with a smile. The pilot's eyes widened in surprise. "What do you mean?" "You saved my daughter's life," David said, gesturing towards his house. "After I brought you back home, Emma drew a picture for you. She was so excited about meeting a real pilot. You made her dream come true, even though you didn't know it." The pilot's face softened. She walked towards the house, her eyes fixed on the drawing in her hand. It was the same drawing that Emma had shown David. On the back, she had written, "Thank you for visiting our house. Please come again." The pilot smiled. She turned to David. "I'd like to do more than visit your house, David," she said, her eyes twinkling. "How would you and Emma like to go on an airplane ride?" Riley's jaw dropped. "Really? Of course," the pilot said, her smile widening. "It's the least I can do to repay you for saving my life." Emma's face lit up. "Can we, Daddy?" she asked, her eyes shining with excitement. David hesitated. He didn't want to put Emma in danger. But the pilot had saved his daughter's life. He owed her this much. Besides, he knew Emma would never forgive him if he said no. "'Kay," he said, forcing a smile. "But I'm not getting on that plane with you," the pilot laughed. "Don't worry, David, you'll be fine." She turned to Emma. "You ready, Emma?" she asked. Emma nodded, unable to speak. She was too excited. The pilot helped Emma into the helicopter. Then she turned to David. "I'll be back in an hour. Don't wait for me," she said with a wink. As the helicopter took off, David watched, a mixture of fear and pride on his face. He knew this was an experience his daughter would never forget, and he was glad he had given her the opportunity. 1 hour later, the helicopter landed in the yard. David and Emma rushed to the door. When they opened it, they were met by the sight of Emma's face, her eyes shining with happiness. "It was amazing, Daddy," she exclaimed, jumping into his arms. "I got to fly the helicopter." David's eyes widened in surprise. "You did," Emma nodded. "The pilot let me," she said with a big smile. David hugged her tightly. "I'm glad you had fun," he said. At that moment, the pilot stepped out of the helicopter. "Emma, you were right," she said with a smile. "You do have a bright future ahead of you." She handed Emma a small package. "I got this for you," she said. Emma's eyes widened as she unwrapped the package. Inside was a model of a helicopter. It was beautiful. "Thank you," she whispered. The pilot put a hand on David's shoulder. "Thank you again for saving my life, David," she said. "I owe you one." David waved his hand dismissively. "Don't mention it," he said. "It was no trouble." He paused. "Actually, I owe you one myself," he said with a smile. "You made my daughter's dream come true." The pilot smiled back. "It was my pleasure," she said. "And who knows, maybe someday you'll see me on TV. I'm going to be a famous pilot, just you wait and see." David laughed. "I believe you," he said. "You have what it takes." As the pilot walked away, David turned to Emma. "Come on, sweetheart," he said. "Let's go inside." As they walked inside, David couldn't help but smile. He had a feeling this was just the beginning of Emma's adventures. He couldn't wait to see what the future had in store for her.